What's going on, everyone? Alex here. So, as you can probably tell from the title, I'm not very impressed with the new iPhone 14 Pro. To cut a long story short, I just don't think this phone is worth the upgrade if you're coming from the 13 Pro. And I'm still undecided as to whether it's worth upgrading from the 12 Pro the previous year. So stick around if you want me to explain why. So it started off on a bad foot from launch day. I went to buy the phone on launch day and Apple's website just kept crashing and wouldn't let me actually make the purchase, which is strange because Apple loves taking people's money. But that meant that I missed the kind of first batch of iPhones, so mine was delayed until like the 4th of October, I think it was. And yeah, I obviously saw a lot of reviews in the meantime, all kind of giving the similar opinion, like it's not really much of an upgrade from previous years. So I questioned whether to keep it or not, but I decided to keep it because I wanted to see the phone for myself. So just to note, I went for the standard 14 Pro just because I really like this form factor. I had the 13 Pro last year and I love the size of it. Previously I've had bigger phones and yeah, I just really like the 6.1 inch size screen, and battery life is perfect for me. I don't really need the extra large battery life that the Max would give you, so that's why I went with the 14 Pro. Also, I go for the 128 gig storage, just it works for me. I didn't use it up last year and I have iCloud storage to top up in case I need it. So I know companies are moving towards more environmentally friendly packaging with less waste, and that is great, don't get me wrong, but I remember when the unboxing of an Apple product was a big event and people really looked forward to it, and it just seems to be gone these days. This year's iPhone 14 Pro unboxing is a carbon copy to last year's 13 Pro. All they've done is change the colour of the box. This year it's white, last year it was black, and yeah, everything is the exact same. And I don't really know what I expect, but I just wish each year was a bit unique and something to look forward to like it used to be. So as expected, this year all you get is the phone, the charging cable, no power brick, and you get Apple stickers and a bit of documentation, and that's it. So my first impression of the phone was it feels slightly heavier than last year's one, and that was a heavy phone already itself. And I was right, it is slightly heavier, but not as much as it feels. The 14 Pro weighs 206 grams and the 13 Pro weighs 204 grams, so only a small difference. And for reference, the previous one, the 12 Pro, only weighed 189 grams the previous year, so that was the big jump between the 12 and the 13. The 14 Pro does feel a little bit more chunky, and I'm not gonna lie, I really like that. I like the phone to have a bit of weight to it, so yeah, that suits me. I think the extra 2 grams comes from the camera. It seems slightly bigger than last year, which makes sense because they have added in a new 48 megapixel sensor, which is the first time they've actually upgraded it since the iPhone 6S back in 2015, which is crazy. But I'll touch more on the camera in a little bit. Now, the first thing that I did before even turning on the phone was apply a screen protector. This is something that I didn't do with my 13 Pro and I kind of regret it. My old phone has a few little scratches and scrapes and just a bit annoying. It could have been prevented with a screen protector. They're very cheap and very easy to apply these days. I'll leave a link to the one that I got down in the description. It was so easy to apply and it just gives you a bit of extra protection. You'd hardly even notice it was there. So as you can probably tell, the design of this year's phone is exactly the same as last year's. It's virtually identical. All they've done is slightly change up the colours. I went for space black, which to be fair is probably the best colour that I've ever seen. But again, it's only slightly different to last year's graphite 13 Pro, and at first glance you probably wouldn't even notice it. Depending on the light, the 14 Pro is much darker and the side rails are more black, but overall there's not too much of a difference. The new deep purple does look nice, but I'm not really a fan of different coloured phones, to be honest. Also, we're still stuck with the same lightning port that was introduced about 10 years ago, which is crazy. So we still have the same charging speed and data transfer as we have had for the past 10 years. So the design is very similar, but Apple being Apple, they have made it just different enough that your 13 Pro cases won't fit on your 14 Pro. Now that's to be expected. I presume they're never gonna make two phones identical, but having them so similar looking, and yet I can't use my previous case on my new phone, it's just a little bit annoying. As I mentioned, the camera module is slightly bigger, so it doesn't really fit into the 13 Pro case. So the main difference with the phone this year is the introduction of the dynamic island. So I can appreciate this feature from a design point of view. They've made use of their really good OLED display and turned the pill-shaped cutout for camera sensor and Face ID and turned it into a bit of a handy feature. Kind of. I do, however, think it's a bit of a gimmick. So the phone starts at €1,399 here in Ireland, and you're trying to tell me that this little widget thing at the top of the phone is one of its main features. It's just a bit ridiculous. So there are some handy features with Dynamic Island, like for example, if you're listening to music, you close the app, the song will sit at the top of the screen, and then all you have to do is either long press or tap the screen, and you can kind of open the app or open a little widget to adjust the song. Or if you have a timer, you can close the app and you'll see how much time you have left. Or if you have a personal hotspot on, you'll see that it's on in the dynamic island, and then all you need to do is tap it and you're straight into the menu. These are all nice to have features, but to have it as your flagship feature on your new phone kind of tells you a lot about what's new with this phone. But to highlight something like Face ID now in the dynamic island is a bit pointless because there was never an issue before. Overall, it just seems like a feature that shouldn't really be talked about that much. It doesn't really add that much value to the phone compared to previous years. So we still have the same gorgeous OLED display from last year with ProMotion. This is Apple's version of 120Hz adaptive refresh rate. And this is great for watching content, for scrolling through different social media apps, and just general use. The screen is really nice. But the main difference this year is the 14 Pro can go up to 2000 nits of brightness, which is 200 nits brighter than last year's 13 Pro. So that's great if you're someone who's outdoors a lot and needs a really bright screen. Personally, I thought the 13 Pro was already really bright. I never had any issues with it, but an extra 200 nits is a great little addition. We also now have an always on display, and for the life of me, I don't understand why this is a popular feature. Maybe I'm missing something, but when I put my phone down, I don't want to slightly see what's going on the screen. They're already distracting enough, and if I really don't want to get distracted, I'll put on Do Not Disturb or even put it in a different room, so always on display is wasted on me. Fun fact, by the way, I used to work for Samsung for nearly 4 years, so I'm well used to always on displays, and they actually released their first iteration on the Galaxy S7 in 2016. And even back then, I didn't really understand why anyone would want an always on display. Now, I'm not sure if this will affect the battery life, but it has to, right? It's just dimming down the screen, you can still see the wallpaper, and yeah, surely it'll just add an extra bit of drain to the battery. Just seems like a silly feature to me that I turn off straight away. Another cool feature that they added is crash detection, which sounds like a great feature, but one that I hope I'll never have to use. Basically, the phone will use its internals and the GPS to detect if you are moving fast and then suddenly stop, and it'll ring emergency services straight away. This is a great feature. Hopefully it saves a bit of lives, but yeah, again, hopefully I never have to use it. So I know I've been pretty harsh on this phone so far, and I do think it's justified. There's not really that many features that they've improved upon, but where they do probably make up for it is in the camera. Apple always seems to deliver with their cameras. Now, every year I get a new phone, I have these grand plans of taking lots of photos and using all the features, and after a few months I find myself not really doing that. It's just the way it is. I guess I'm not as into photography as I think I am. But anytime I did use the 13 Pro, I was always very impressed with how easy it is to use and just the quality of the images it took. And as I mentioned earlier, the 14 Pro now has a 48 megapixel sensor, so you can capture even more in your images. And having used it for a few days now, the photos that I get out of it are really good. The depth of field that it delivers just with the normal lens is really amazing. To get the most out of your photos, you should go into the camera settings and enable Pro RAW and then select 48 megapixels. And this will give your photos the most data. And that's great if you're into editing your photos. Just to be warned, these photos will be much larger in size, so you may fill up your storage a lot quicker if you're taking all your photos in the 48 megapixel Pro RAW setting. Another camera feature worth mentioning is to do with cinematic mode. You can now record 4K in 24 or 30 frames per second, so depending on your preference, you now have options. They've made some major improvements to the stabilization of the phone, which is great if you're into recording any action shots. You can add this to the camera app by going to preserve settings and enabling action mode. Then you go into the camera app, there's a little button in the top left that you click if you want to record with this stabilization on. And the results are absolutely amazing. It's as if I'm using a gimbal with the 14 Pro. These clips were recorded with the 13 Pro and the 14 Pro in each hand, and they recorded at the exact same time, and as you can see, the 14 Pro stabilization is unbelievable. So my final thoughts. Overall, I would have to say that this phone is a little bit of a disappointment. On its own, it's a fantastic device. Amazing screen, great battery life, and really top quality cameras. But as soon as you start comparing it to the 13 Pro, you really struggle to see where the improvements are. There are improvements, don't get me wrong, but they're very small in my opinion. So if you have the 13 Pro, I would definitely think twice about upgrading this year. There aren't that many improvements that justify an upgrade. If you're someone who has an 11 or older, then this upgrade would be amazing. There's lots of improvements in terms of battery life and camera quality that you will really notice. The one that I kind of struggle with is the 12 Pro. And overall I would say it would be worth the upgrade, but it's literally the exact same design as the 12 Pro, and that might annoy people. When you get a new phone, you kind of want a new experience. So if that's the case, wait till next year and hopefully it's a new design. But if you do need a better battery life or want the improved cameras, then the 14 Pro is a great phone on its own. Anyway, That's all for this video. I hope you found it useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.